My film cameraman, George Phoenix, who's one of my co-authors on this book, we all had to leave. So we went inside the basement area that was not parking area. And then, when we were readmitted, our IDs were checked. And one of my cameramen didn't have an ID. George didn't, because he had just come to the station. So I had to vouch for him with my ID. And so, within reason, we were all checked out. And nobody let Jack Ruby in. So they were being very, very careful that day. I was reporting this. I was reporting exactly what I saw. I saw the squads of men who were assigned to search that basement. They searched up overheating ducts. They searched under cars parked in the basement. They searched inside of police vans, which I was calling on the air paddy wagons before I realized it was a racial slur. It is, you know. Paddy. Joke is, an Irishman walked out of a bar. It could happen. So anyway, that's why they called them paddy wagons. So they were searching inside paddy wagons, any vehicle that was down there. And I was talking about that on radio and television. And so I was witnessing a very carefully constructed security plan which had been organized, ordered, and conducted by my best police contact. And the fact that I was reporting this with some degree of admiration had nothing to do with the fact that I really liked that guy. It was really what they were doing. And so I was as shocked as anybody when Ruby lunged forward and shot Oswald. So, as I said, they were very carefully searching everything. And some things had happened overnight in Dallas. As I said, we were getting a lot of all media outlets were getting crank calls, bomb threats, all that sort of thing. And we realized that we were at the epicenter of a pretty crazy developing situation. So we were well aware that somebody, and I was actually saying on the air, 2 days ago, it was high security for the visit of the President of the United States. And this Sunday morning, it's high security for the safety of the man who is accused of murdering him. Because he is the most hated suspect in modern American history. And we know that someone might take it upon themselves to try to take his life. Overnight, there had been a very credible call come in to Sheriff Bill Decker's office. That call threatened to take that prisoner away while he was being transferred. They were going to somehow take the prisoner and kill him themselves. That's what they said. That's what they threatened. And so, Sheriff Decker had tried to get a hold of Police Chief Curry, but Curry had finally, poor man, gone home to get some rest. And he had probably taken his phone off the hook because when one of my reporter friends tried to call him at home, nobody answered. And so when, it had already been announced throughout all of us that the transfer was going to be made public. Not one member of the Dallas Police Department would have ever wanted to make that a public transfer. But the city fathers were trying to be cooperative, and the out-of-town press, having seen the racial unrest across the American South, having seen the nasty billy club wielding, butch, awful Bull Connor stereotypes all through the South, Selma, places like that. They suspected Dallas of that, and you can't blame them. But I was a Dallasite, and I saw that it wasn't the same thing. So, not to get back off the subject again, but that's why they insisted on making it a public transfer, to please the out-of-town press, not so much us guys in town. I would have thought, if they don't want to make it a public transfer, that's fine with me. But if it's going to be a public transfer, it's my job to take it. That is, to shoot it. And I can tell you this, if we of the press had not been taking our shots that day, then Jack Ruby couldn't have taken his. So, that night there had been this very credible threat. When the morning came, Chief Curry ended up back in his office, and Captain Fritz had been very, very busy for the last 2 days questioning Oswald. And he had been disgusted by the very idea of making it a transfer public. And so he hadn't really been paying very much attention to the plans for the transfer until that Sunday morning. And when they began to talk about it, Chief Curry, responding to the likelihood of this threat that Sheriff Decker's office had received overnight, that's when Curry ordered the armored truck. Well, the armored truck clearance was too high to get it into the basement. So as they tried to back it down, they had to stop and leave it blocking the entrance there on Commerce Street, which was the out ramp. The Main Street ramp was the down ramp. That's how Ruby ended up getting in. So they had that armored truck in the entrance. And when Fritz and Curry and the other police officers who were going to conduct that transfer were talking about it that morning, Captain Fritz disagreed with the idea of taking him in an armored truck because, he said, that is a slow-moving vehicle. We do not want a slow-moving, vulnerable vehicle to be attacked by a well-coordinated group. And apparently, according to that threat that Decker's office had gotten, it sounded like it was going to be a well-coordinated attack. That's why the chief had ordered that truck. But Fritz said, no, let's take him in a patrol car. Unmarked, of course. But let's get him there in a hurry. Get him in a fast-moving vehicle. And use the armored truck as a decoy. Those plans were made up until, and I mean this ever so literally, the last minute. The last 1 minute before Ruby shot Oswald. And here's the time frame. And I can tell you this time frame for certain because there are some very definite markers that mark the time along this way. The exact time of that transfer was not known to any of us, including the police, until it was going to happen, because they were depending on Forrest Sorrells, who was the chief of the Secret Service office in Dallas, a man in his 60s who had been in that position since the 1930s. And he was questioning Oswald that morning, and only when he was through were the police going to transfer Oswald. So, unknown to us all, upstairs, Forrest Sorrells was methodically questioning Oswald and getting nothing to speak of. And downstairs, the police were thinking about the safeguarding of not only the prisoner who was going to be in the fast-moving, unmarked patrol car, but they were thinking about the security of the of the heavy armored truck that was actually going to be a decoy by then. So here's what happened. They had carefully emptied the basement, readmitted us all with ID checks, made certain Sergeant Dean had assigned guards to every entrance, had ordered that no elevator be brought down to the basement area under any circumstance. Those orders were followed absolutely. And so at the last minute, knowing that they had to protect the decoy, which, because no officers were going to really be riding in it, they needed more armed officers. So at the last, literally last minute, and I'm talking about 50 seconds, I've timed it many times. At the last minute, they had decided, we've got to get some more firepower to go with the armored truck. So, at the very last moments leading up to the transfer, Lieutenant Rio Pierce came to Pat Dean and said, Pat, I want you to give me 2 men in a big hurry right now to go with me. Pat sent Sergeant Jim Putnam and another guy whose name slips me right now, maybe Billy Joe Maxey. Anyway, he sent Putnam and another officer to ride with him in an unmarked black police car. That happened to be in the basement. So, with the truck blocking the exit, they had to get that car out of the basement so that it could round the block and escort the armored truck. That all took place 50 seconds before the shot was fired. And Rudy got down in there because he got in while the car was going out of the entrance ramp on Main Street, which was unusual. Now the timing. Jack